Hello there, this is Carlos, your overlord of the Showdown Battle League. This is the Season 8 draft video, and I got a few other coaches here with me. We'll start off with Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm the coach of the Boston Brayloons, and I'm super duper excited for this video.
Sifra.
Hey, it's Sifri, coach of the Washington Nationals.
Jack.
I'm Jack of the Toronto Raptors, and after last season, my opinion is no longer valid.
Nice.
And finally, Noah.
This is Noah, coach of the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, formerly Philadelphia Flyers.
This loaded cast has come together today to go over our draft for Season 8, which recently finished, and we will be starting off with Lauren's team, the Rothenberg Reuniclus, which is Buzzwole, Gardevoir Mega, Goodra, Chandelier, Donphan, Rotom Wash, Amoonguss, Registeel, Cinccino, Malamar, Articuno, and then Ghostium Z, because for this season, everyone drafted a Z Crystal. Lauren's team came in at an average of 14.8 for all of us, and I guess what do you guys think about it?
Jumped in at once.
Okay. I thought you were saying something, and okay.
Nah.
We'll cut this part out, or we can just leave this in because it's entertaining.
Is this entertaining?
No. So Lauren's team, I thought was pretty underwhelming. I had it ranked at number 16. I just felt like there's no reason for her to have 20 points left over. I felt like the draft order just seemed kind of off. She picked like picks that like high priorities that I didn't feel deserved that kind of treatment. There's no really like high impact Pokemon outside of Gardevoir that really stand out to me. Like when I look at this team, I'm not like, oh damn, I really got to be worried about this. It's just like, okay, there are some Pokemon here. She has some bulky Pokemon, but they're not very threatening, so they just kind of get worn down before wearing down their opponent's team, and it just doesn't really accomplish too much, I feel.
The one thing for me that I kind of agree with that. The one thing I noticed about Lauren's team is that she drafted some pretty good breakers. Like with Mega Gardevoir, you're breaking, you're maybe gonna have trouble with some steel types, and she covers that with maybe Buzzwole and Chandelure. But there's absolutely nothing to take advantage of, the wall breaking capabilities. She's gonna try to something and then just get outsped by everything, and there's no offensive threat that can really capitalize. And while her bulk is pretty decent, it feels like balance without any kind of offensive capabilities whatsoever.
And you alluded to the speed thing. Looking at her team, I think the only mon faster than Wash Rotom is Cinccino. Like the only mon over base 87.
Gardevoir is 100, but
base 100. Yep, I think Articuno.
You got me.
No wonder you lost round one.
Yeah.
Oof.
Damn, Carlos.
Carlos, where did your draft rank again?
I don't know about that, but with Lauren's team, it reminds me a lot of something I drafted in the past. Initially, when looking at the team, I really liked it, but knowing this draft style of no speed, just a lot of bulk and no offense, she's definitely gonna run into some issues with it. Balance with basically zero offense struggles versus anything really offensive, or just all sorts of things like a lot of tricks she'll run into this season. It's tough when all you have is switch-ins and nothing to kill anything with. But I do like a lot of the Pokemon she picked. It's just like it was said, you can't really leave over 20 points. And then I'm not a big fan of the Ghostium Z. Maybe if you had regular Gardevoir, it's nice with Chandelure, but I feel you could probably grab a Z that fits this team a bit better. And with how she is prioritizing things, maybe she could have grabbed like Fire Z a lot earlier, or like Fighting Z, something like that.
I'll be a bit more positive towards this team. I think Mega Gardevoir is an absolute just tank. Like, it can destroy most teams just by itself. So as long as she plays smart, make sure it gets enough time on the field, and like use it offensively, it can really just be a massive kill leader. And her bulk is pretty damn tremendous. Like, Registeel, Rotom Wash, and throw in a Mungus, and then like a Chandelure for the fire immunity, and Buzzwole, which is obscenely good as a tank. Especially, it pairs really well with Registeel. They complement each other. And outside the fire weakness, but she does have resist to that in the forms of like Chandelure and Rotom Wash. So I do see the potential for this team, and if this is what we're calling the quote unquote last team of the draft, I still think it is pretty threatening, and I think Gardevoir, if used well, can really make this team shine because she's going to get so many kills.
Yeah, piggybacking off what Jack said, even though this is the bottom team on our list, we all pretty much agree that there is no bad team. This is 16 really solid teams with maybe a top 5 split off, but most teams are good to really good.
Except Carlos'
really,
team.
Yeah, except my team, obviously.
I mean, definitely, just going back to that, is that she does have a ton of bulk and, a ton of wall-breaking capabilities. So as long as she can, try to figure out a way around the speed, this team definitely has a ton of potential.
Any last comments on this team?
I think we're good.
Perfect. Then we will move on to the next team, which just so happens to be my team, the Oklahoma City Electivires. And that starts off with Mega Lopunny, Slurpuff, Zeraora, Haxorus, Greninja, Metagross was released, Rhyperior, Caracosta, Lucario, Meloetta, Exploud, Gligar, which was picked up in the free agency transaction, and then Fighting Z. Thoughts on the team?
I think Carlos is going to be in a world for her as soon as he plays any team that has either Toxic Spikes or Sticky Web.
Yeah.
Just I mean to add on to more of that, there's close to no hazard removal, and it's a very fast offensive grounded team. So you're pretty much depending on Gligar every week to keep hazards off the field, and I think these kind of builds, looking up and down Toxic Spikes and Webs, just looks like such a pain in the ass. Because once Lopunny and Zeraora are slowed down, they're going to be less effective. Once the other sort of tanks on the team are poisoned, once Haxorus is poisoned, setting up is going to be more difficult. It's a very offensive build. He's definitely going for a different kind of style, but I don't know. I just don't like having only one remover with a team so grounded.
Yeah, and adding on to that, it's really, really ground weak team. And I know that it's a pretty offensive build, so that's not as important. But it is really bad when the majority of the teams have a really strong ground attacker, and you're just going to have to lose a Pokemon every game or bring Gligar every week. Which is your tier 3. You don't want to have to rely on it every single match for this team to function. That's just my general thoughts on it. Really ground weak and can struggle, in my opinion.
Yeah, this team almost makes me sad because up until the first 5 picks are looking like a pretty interesting offense team, and then it's he gets scared and starts drafting Rhyperior, Caracosta, just things that don't have that offensive push to them. Kind of goes back near the end with Meloetta and Exploud, but I don't know. I'm sad to see something like Rhyperior here, just because we were talking about, you can just Earthquake through the bottom half of this draft, no problem. And there was potential for some more offensive threats to kind of let the high tier offensive threats shine if we wanted to go full offense.
And one thing I kind of really noticed about that, kind of along those lines, is that first pick Mega Lopunny, that's an absolutely fantastic mon, but you've got to support it in the right way. So you see things like bulky Mew, something like a Clefable. You're gonna have to try to find ways to get around things that check it, because once those are gone, you can pretty much speak. I don't see really a response to a bulky Psychic type. Anything, you can really slap a Cobra Berry on that, and it checks for Ninja, and then on the wall, there's a ton of offensive capability. I don't necessarily like the way Mega Lopunny was supported in this sense. There's no spike user or even toxic spike user talking about that again. overall, it's a fantastic mon that I think could be supported a little better.
I am not going to comment on my team, but I'm going in a very different direction, so I'm excited to see how this goes. Do not be surprised if you see multiple free agency transactions or trades, but that's just how I roll. So, not surprised my draft didn't go perfect, but I'm happy with it for what it is.
Yeah.
But any last comments?
Carlos, if you want a rock type, I will give you Gigalith for your best Pokemon.
That's actually a little tempting, but we'll address that later. Going on, we have a tie in the average rankings between Jarrett and Robert's team, but we'll start with Robert. And his team, the Carson Rhydons, is Tapu Koko, Hawlucha, Mega Beedrill, Vaporeon, Serena, Cryogonal, Mesprit, Blissey, Doublade, Gliscor, Rapidash, and Electrium Z. Thoughts on the team?
My biggest gripe with this team, and I'm sure it's going to get brought up by probably Brian, if not someone else, is that he started off the draft with Koko Lucha, which is a great core, and then Mega Beedrill, which pairs really nicely. So he starts off with this great offense, and then when you look as the draft continues, it's like he completely changes his mind on what he wants to do. He starts going Vaporeon, Blissey, Doublade, Gliscor, Cryogonal. He sort of drops the offense and just loads up on not even just bulk, but borderline stall. And the team just kind of looks like a weird half and half mix of very offensive oriented and incredibly defensive. And I don't really know how that's gonna affect the way he builds and plans, because it looks like he didn't really know. Look at Carlos's team. You can tell pretty throughout he had an idea of what he wants to do. So do most of these teams. Even Lauren's, it looks like she was pretty consistently focused on bulk. I don't really know what kind of team this is. I honestly don't. It just seems like he doesn't really know himself.
Yeah, just building on that, Tapu Koko and Beedrill, they have a lot of momentum. They have access to U-turn, Volt Switch, and they're fast as hell. And they can play a really high-pressure playstyle. But the problem is that with these slow, stally Pokemon, you just kind of give up all your pressure. Sure, you get to fire off a huge Scald with your Vaporeon, and then what? Then the other player gets back in the driver's seat, and you don't really want that to be happening when you can keep up such good tempo with these high aggressive fast picks. So it just kind of seems very out of place for me to have such a bulky back end of the draft with such an exciting top 3 Pokemon.
Yeah, and going off that, those first 3 picks, the Koko, Lucha, and Mega Beedrill, those love just a massive wall breaker, which he didn't grab after that. Something like a Darmanitan, which has even got momentum and can just take advantage of the momentum that Beedrill and Koko are going to grab and start to break for Hawlucha would go a long way on a team like this.
I will say to compliment this team, I love the twist of drafting Z crystals is definitely tough, and I think he did a good job with that, getting Electrium Z for Koko. I feel if you're going to draft a Z crystal, you either want it to work really well with a lot of Pokemon or really well with one of your stud Pokemon. So I really like what he did with that. And then I definitely agree with everything that's been said. I think he's drafted a lot of good Pokemon, but it just doesn't. It's going to be weird how to fit it together. And the really stall-oriented Pokemon at the bottom, you're going to have trouble mixing that in when your other the other ones are just so fragile, and you're going in 2 different directions.
Yeah. Simply put, though, Tapu Koko plus Lucha is going to be a threat every single week. So that alone makes this team immensely threatening.
I think that, Koko Lucha is what it is. And just to put something out that hasn't been said yet is I do really like his hazard support. His spinners, he's got Toxic Spike users, some Stealth Rockers, so I think he's going to have like the one thing with momentum is that you don't want to get chipped down by hazards every time you're coming in. So I do really like his hazard support. And some of these things like Serena even can act a little bit as a wall breaker. I think it's got like 120 base attack, so he's going to maybe have to come up with some innovative ways to use those wall breakers. Coco Lucha, but I think with a momentum team like that, the hazard support is a really nice complement to that.
Okay, any last thoughts on this team? Perfect. Then we will move on to Jarrett, the coach of the Muventus, with Mega Pinsir, Starmie, Nidoking, Arcanine, Serperior, Stakataka, Heliolisk, Flygon, Aromatisse, Scrafty, Vanillux, and Waterium Z. Thoughts on the team? I guess
to start off with something. Oh.
Go ahead.
To start off with something that I do really like, the Mega Pinsir is something that is definitely going to appreciate hazard removal, and starting to support it immediately with his second pick of Starmie. I always appreciate a draft that likes to support their one big mon that they go for in the first round.
Yeah, I do actually think it's a really good call. I think this is an interesting team. Like, it's pretty aggressive. I think Jack and I were talking about it a little bit earlier. It's just like it just falls a little bit short. It feels a little bit off. A lot of the mons are somewhat frail, and they're sure they could be fast in Starmie or superior levels, but they're just not like super fast. So it feels like he's trying to build like a offensive team, but just wasn't all there. It's sort of like somewhere between like a balanced, bulky offense and full-on HO kind of build, and that's why it felt off to me.
Yeah, I guess to build on that, I was talking to Brian about it. Not necessarily the best ground resists or the best stealth rockers, because his 3 rocker options are Mega Pinsir, which is really horrible as a rocker, Nidoking, which isn't bad, but it is pretty frail, especially compared to Nidoqueen, and then Stakataka, which is bulky, but it's got that weakness, which means it might be hard in some matchups to set up hazards. Overall, though, like, he does have pretty good setup options in terms of Swords Dance, Mega Pinsir, Serperior is great, Scrafty's got a ton of options, Dragon Dance, Flygon, which I know he got sniped on Kyurem, but I do like Flygon as a team on his team, especially because it gives him a backup remover, so not all the pressure has to go on Starmie. Definitely not a bad build, definitely an offensive-oriented team. He's just going to have to play it in that way. Like, I hope he doesn't sort of go in week by week like a defensive Starmie, defensive Arcanine, because I don't think his team would really support that. I think he needs to play a bit more offensive for him to have the most amount of success, and then use Mega Pinsir really well.
I completely agree with that. Like, when I was looking at this team, I was thought it's very good offense, but and so when your normal switch in and something like that is, Stakataka, and you can take advantage of that so easily. Just with something like that, there's going to be like a lot of trouble defensively. Mega Pinsir is that, you have to really do the hazard support. So along with what Sifri was saying early with supporting that with Starmie, that is really nice. But he's going to have a hard time running like a defensive Starmie with rapid spin support, just because of the nature of his team. There could be a lot of trouble just supporting that in the right way, even though he does have some of the mons to do that, just because of the whole nature of the team and how it is kind of built like a very offensive team, which it is very good at that offensive part.
For me, when I look at this team, I see Mega Pinsir, and then it feels like he doesn't have a lot of like stud Pokemon. Like, you see some teams with a bunch of OU Pokemon or like really, really strong individual Pokemon, but I feel his team was a little more spread out, and then even it just feels sort of like a UU team or something like that, which isn't inherently bad, but I feel like he could have topped off the draft with some really nice, I don't know, maybe better tier 1 mon. I don't know what it is that feels weird about it, but I like his Water, Fire, Grass core, but the like semi-balanced sort of vibe with not really consistent switch-ins will definitely be a problem. But I guess with that, any final thoughts? Perfect. Then we will move on to Travis's team. Travis is the coach of the Miami Dolphins, and his Pokemon are Heatran, Tapu Bulu, Alola Ninetales, Salamence, Mega Blastoise, Cobalion, and then he made a free agency transaction where he dropped Cloyster, Driftbloom, and Komala, and he picked up Mudsdale, Hitmonlee, and Type Null, and then his last two mods are Ninjask and Xatu, followed by Gracium Z. Thoughts on the team?
So I like this team. At least I did like this team at the very beginning of this draft. I had this team ranked as my number 12 team, so it wasn't bad. It wasn't like the best, but it's still a pretty solid team. But my biggest issue is that he picked the awesome core, Heatran, Tapu Bulu. I played with it last season, but I felt like he didn't build from there. He kind of picked up, Ninetales, Mence. He picked up some other pieces, and it just feels like a few different pieces of a puzzle that aren't all together just yet. I think it could be easily put together with some trades or another free agency transaction, but it just doesn't feel like it's all there yet to me.
The one thing that I really noticed when I look at this team is that even if you just look at those first 6 with Heatran, Bulu, Ninetales, Salamence, Blastoise, and Cobalion, that's a fantastic team in itself. And you look at some of his lower tier picks, really support his team all that well. It almost looks to me that he might be caught into something where he's bringing those 6 more than he'd like, and it'd be kind of easy to predict. So even though that core in itself has a lot of potential and could be really nice, it just I would have liked to see some more support with those lower tier modes.
Agreed. And on top of that top core, I also really like his Gracium Z pick to go with it so that he can fire off either Bloom Dooms with Heatran or with Bulu, both of which make pretty good use of Gracium Z. But like you said, the low tiers, I think he might get some use out of Hitmonlee. If he can use it kind of like a pseudo Halucha with the terrain with Unburden, I think that'd be interesting to at least see. But I agree that the low tiers feel a little disjointed compared to the really strong core that you see at the top.
Yeah, for me, echoing what's been said a little bit, I've also drafted Heatran and Bulu in another league before, and it's a fantastic core, and I think you can use that amazing. And I think this is probably one of the best drafted Z moves in the league. Although it's fairly obvious that should be picked with the 2 he started with. I think just playing off with Heatran maybe using it or Bulu using it is just so threatening, and then you don't know which one's going to be defensive or offensive. And his first 6 are just outstanding, but when Mudsdale is like your premier low tier mon, it's a little questionable what's going to be going on there. I feel like he can piece it together, but already using 3 of your free agency transactions and not making, I don't feel like it's a huge difference to his team. It's going to be really difficult later on if he wants to make any other changes.
So I really like this team, so I'll hop in. I think I put it number 6 in my rankings, which is way higher than most people. I mean, I just love the first 6 mons, with I guess Mudsdale too, so much, just because I think grassy terrain works really well with this team, because he's got a lot of bulky Pokemon, things like Cobalion or Salamence, which could be used both offensively or defensively, and for some of the grounded ones that don't have recovery, like Cobalion, Heatran, and Mudsdale, that passive recovery from grassy terrain is fantastic, plus, takes away the ground weakness from some of his Pokemons like Heatran and Cobalion. Mixed with how much setup he has, and then having Alolan Ninetales with Aurora Veil, I could see him pairing that with Salamence, getting a free Dragon Dance off, and then with Moxie just going to town from there, or Swords Dance, or Bulk Up Bulu, or Calm Mind, or Swords Dance Cobalion. So I just feel like that main core is going to give so much trouble to a lot of teams. Mega Blastoise is also fantastic. It's a great spinner. It's bulky, but it also hits really hard to function as a wall breaker. And then for his low tier, Hitmonlee is really nice. Again, Unburden is a good support for grassy terrain. Ninjask is not great, but it is absurdly fast. which is one thing to consider. Base 160 is just ridiculous. And Type Null is just really bulky. So I think I have seen people use that well. I think his low tiers have potential if he can use them, but that main core backed with Grassy Terrain and Aurora Veil is so strong that I think you'll see a lot of success.
Okay, I guess we'll just move on. The next team is Brandon of the Albany Alterias. His team is Jirachi, Zapdos, Mega Charizard X, Umbreon, Tapu Lele, and just to note, that is with Telepathy, not the Psychic Terrain ability, followed by Breloom, Alomomola, Skuntank, Aerodactyl, Claydol, Blastoise, and Steelium Z. Thoughts on the team? I guess I can start off, actually. For me, this is one of the more confusing teams. I think, I put it at 15. Personally, I like it a bit more better than that in pieces, but when I'm looking at the team, I see, like, Alomomola and Blastoise sort of have overlapping roles. I like Blastoise as a spinner, but I see it just seems a little confusing to me to go with Umbreon. I feel like just the lower half of this team doesn't stand out a whole ton to me. The top 3 mons are going to be definitely brutal to deal with for teams, but and I do love that he grabbed a lot of hazard removal.
Yeah, the large amount of hazard removal really going to help Charizard X, and that's really what his team is going to hinge on here. Because it almost looks like, just looking at his team, it's Charizard X plus support for Charizard X, which will be interesting to see how it plays out.
My only problem with that is that I don't know about other people. I've never seen Charizard X do as well as it probably could have. I know that's probably like maybe a dumb thing to say, but like he does have a lot of hazard removal, but I feel like Charizard X kind of carries his team a bit, and I don't really know about the rest of his offense. Like, I'm not sure how Tapu Lele will do that Psychic Terrain. Like, I think it'll be all right. I don't know if it'll be great. Breloom is good. Jirachi is nice. Like, he's got good picks, but the overall synergy of his team seems a bit off. A lot of like overlapping types. That everything kind of gathers around that 100 speed tier. I think having diverse speed tiers is really important in the league, and having a mix of fast Pokemon, like at least one or two. And I guess he has Aerodactyl, but outside of that, everything clumps around base 100, which might make it easier for some people to prep and like run Adamant or Modest on certain Pokemon if they know they don't have to worry about anything in that 100 to 115 range, for example.
So one thing that strikes me is that if he did kind of build that team around Charizard X, which it looked like he did, I'm not the biggest fan of the way he supported it. Like Jirachi's Aptos, I think that's a fantastic way to start. You can use it full turn, you can use it for hazard support. But then picks like Umbreon and Alomomola, as well as like even something like Skuntank, you get those two like big fat wish passy, more bulky offense stally teams, and that's just not something that's necessarily going to work out well with Charizard X. You pick those if you have some kind of threats without recovery, and he already has Roost on Zapdos, Roost on Charizard, and it doesn't really make sense, some of those picks, to see how he kind of tries to use those more bulky ones to support something like Charizard X.
I'm actually going to go against the curve, and I actually like a lot how he plays around this Charizard Mega X, and it's for a completely different reason. I know generally when we think of Charizard X, we think of the Dragon Dance sweeper that can kind of clean through your teams, but I think this looks really, really nice as like a bulky Will-O-Wisp kind of Charizard X kind of set. And I think that team actually can support it really well. I don't know how he's going to end up actually playing with this team, but I think it looks really interesting with that kind of playstyle, and it could be a really annoying bulky offense or balanced team to deal with if it's played right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. If you look at it more in that way, it starts to make a bit more sense, but it really comes down to how he plays it. Yeah.
one thing I want to throw out is I don't see like any use for Steelium Z on his team, because anytime you'd run like Steelium Z Jirachi, I think Iron Head is just better because you want to flinch, and I guess Flash Cannon or Doom Desire maybe, but I don't really see any other Pokemon that really takes advantage of Steelium Z at all. So that seems like kind of maybe a bit of a missed opportunity.
Any last thoughts on this team?
Well, I think we're good.
Perfect. Then we will move on to Tony's team, the first overall pick of the draft. He is the coach of the Columbus Litins, and his team is Kyurem Black, Necrozma, Venusaur Mega, Suicune, Raikou, Entei, Palossand, Fortress, Hitmontop, Shiinotic, and Alola Raticate, followed by Darkium Z. Thoughts on the team?
I really do not like this team very much. I'm just going to go outright and say it. I think it's a bulky build that just hits everything wrong. It doesn't have any ground resist or flying resists. Its dark resists are Shiinotic, Hitmontop, and Raticate Alola, which is pretty patchwork cover up at best. And to play a bulky team and be weak to 3 of like the main offensive typings isn't very good in my opinion. Basically all he has going for him is really, really good stats on a lot of these Pokemon, and that itself can't carry a team through bad typing matchups.
Yeah, when I look at this team, the first 6 are some of my absolute favorite Pokemon in the format. I think the first 3 especially are just outstanding together. But the novelty of having the 3 legendary dogs, I don't know how that's going to work. I know it can, but when you have these issues on the bottom of your draft and just with synergy, it's going to be a bit tough. And then, especially with, for me, Darkium Z was just a waste of a Z crystal. I'd really like to see something to pair with one of those top 6 Pokemon really well. Like, if he could have gone for Icium Z early on, since obviously his bottom 5 are pretty not outstanding Pokemon, or really, you could replace those. If you go, like, 7th round for, like, Icium Z, or even, like, 5th or 6th, I think that would really help the offensive part of this team. Yeah.
One thing I noticed is that he's definitely building like a real bulky team, and alongside that, outside of Necrozma, I don't really see any form of like setup on his team. Fantastic like store powered user, but there's no way to beat or anything. So like if he's gonna beat you, he's gonna have to whittle you down and play really well along that core. Doesn't have some of those key resists defensively, even though he does have a lot going for him with his overall fantastic bulk. I think it's going to be like really difficult to play those, just grind it out. You've got to make a lot of good plays in the middle kind of game because you don't have something to necessarily bail you out at the end.
So I'm gonna defend this team because I ranked it pretty high, and everyone's kind of
How high?
I shouldn't have.
How
Kind of high, just a little bit high.
Oh yeah. Yes, this is my rank 1 team. So I think to say he has high base stat totals is an understatement. His base stat totals are insane, and the bulk on even some of his more average Pokemon is ridiculous. Outside of Raticate Alola, which is just going to be like Swords Dance, Sucker Punch, cleaning, everything else on his team can just take hits like nothing, which I think almost makes up for the fact that he doesn't have maybe the best resist to certain types, because a Pokemon like Suicune will just be able to eat up certain hits. Same thing with things like Necrozma, honestly. I actually like a lot of his low-tier picks. Him on top, Intimidate support is really good for a team like this, just because certain threats can be checked much more easily once you get that Intimidate off. Mixed with Fortress and Palossand, which provide spin blocking, rapid spinning, both set hazards, and yeah, I just really like his top picks so much because they are all big threats, and the miscellaneous Glumons he gets later on, I think we'll be able to fill the roles in week by week to help the weaknesses. There definitely are some problems with this team with not having the right types and resistances. I think free agency could really help that because there still are a lot of good picks in the board. So I guess I'm not as worried about that just because right now the main picks he has that he'll probably have all season are just so ungodly good and so strong that I think he'll be able to make up for that in other ways.
Any final thoughts on this team?
Shinnok scares me.
Palisand is like the best Pokemon on this team. That's my opinion.
Okay, and moving on, we have Jack of the Toronto Star Raptors, and his team is Mew, Skarmory, Snorlax, Mega Sableye, Nidoqueen, Virizion, Lantern, Druddigon, Comfey, Primarina, Volcarona, and Firium Z. Thoughts on the team?
It's just a bad draft for a bad player. That's my opinion. That's all.
+1.
That's going to be an oof for me.
Just kidding. I actually really, really like this team. It's a little different from like how I would play, but I think it's really, really cool. It's really defensive. Sableye Mega will be really, really annoying to play against. And he's got really good bulk and play style all the way through. He kind of sticks to his guns. Mew is a really good pick with a lot of options. We say this every year. Skarmory is bulky. Snorlax is bulky. Everything is really bulky, which makes this team like generally hard to deal with. And Volcarona and Primarina are actually really, really difficult threats to deal with. He has the Firium Z to make Volcarona even harder to shut down. So I'm kind of really worried to play against this team. Thankfully, I don't have to unless we both make finals, so that should be good.
Yeah, like my first thoughts looking at this team is honestly mostly just, wow, this is pretty cool. It can go in a really semi-stalled way, but it also packs some good offensive threats. Obviously, Mew can hit from whatever it wants to be, and that Volcarona in the back with Fire Z is, I think, really cool with kind of a stally, whittle him down type build, and then at the end you just Quiver Dance once and run through 5 Pokemon for a win.
Yeah,
I think that this is a pretty good draft. A lot of times, if people start drafting and they kind of forget their draft plans in the middle, kind of like what Brian was saying, but Jack stuck to the same kind of plan this entire time. He wanted to build that stally semi-stall core with some wall breakers and sweeper in the back. I think it has really nice potential for hazard support and alongside of that Volcarona. The one thing that does maybe worry me a little bit is that something like Snorlax necessarily along with this core, like your normal type there oftentimes to pair with Mega Sableye, is something on a team like this, something maybe a little bulkier with recovery. Obviously you do have talk set, and just something like Taunt can really shut that core down. So I'd be interested to see how he plays around that. But overall, I really think that bulk is going to be really tough to play on the long compared to that offense.
So I guess I won't really rate my team, but I'll give my thought process. I think it was Sifri who mentioned like the idea of bouncing between a bunch of walls and then having Volcarona come in late game. And if you really go and watch like many of my games from the past like 3 years of the SBL, that is generally my play style. I play very safe until I have the opportunity to bring in like one sweeper. So I figure if that's the way I play games the most comfortable, let me just go ahead and draft a team that fully supports that. So yeah, I definitely opted up for a lot of bulk. But one thing I wanted to emphasize is that outside of bulk, the other big thing I have on my team is setup. Things like Snorlax and Sableye can be good walls or at least pivots early game. But Magic Bound Sableye with, say, Calm Mind to late game, or Curse Lax, paired with Volcarona. Mew is set up, Comfey is set up, Virizion has set up. So I try to get as many different forms of setup so that my team will never necessarily be passive. Like, it's going to be tough to break the core, but you also know that if you give me free turns, I will be able to utilize those and hit back. Yeah, so I'm excited to try it out. I might have to make a few free agency adjustments depending on what common weaknesses I have. But I'm excited to try a team that I think is just going to suit the way I play regardless.
Another thing I like about this team is I feel like this is another one of the really good Z Crystal picks. I'm not going to list off every single Pokemon that can use it, but it just fits with so many of these Pokemon in different ways where you're almost never going to know who's going to have it. Even though it seems obvious on Volcarona, he has a lot of options to use it for. And with our new system, I just love that pick for this team. But I guess that ends off the first half of our rankings. And to start off the second half, we will be going over to Dennis. Dennis is the coach of the Wisconsin Whimsicots, and his team is Mega Medicham, Manaphy, Victini, Shaman, Buckalola, Landorus I, Ribombee, Slacking, Azelf, Rotom, Regigigas, and Rockium Z. Thoughts on the team?
So Dennis has been building basically the same team for probably a year now, and I would have to say this is probably the most threatening version of it. And the only reason it isn't ranked higher is because the rest of the teams are also really, really good. The reason I say that is he has the classic Sticky Web plus Mega Medicham thing and other big hits out of Victini and that sort of stuff. And I think he's going to be playing this a lot like he's played teams in the past. It's just the usual stuff, but it's aggressive and it's threatening all the way through. You got to be really careful against this kind of team because if you give him the opportunity, he will claim one of your Pokemon with a heavy hitter like Victini, or he'll set up his Manaphy and the whole game for you. So it should be a pretty hard team to play against because you have to be really, really careful with your turns.
Yeah, and I know there have been some teams that we've been saying, there aren't that many Pokemon that kind of, when you're team building, you're like, wow, I really have to watch out for this one. This is the opposite of that, especially those top three in Medicham, Mega, Manaphy, and Victini. You've got to have answers to all of those, or else they can run through you, especially with web support, because all of them have base 100 speed. And if you can get up webs, then outside of a Scarf user, you're going to have a lot of trouble with those and how hard they hit.
It's definitely an absolutely phenomenal offensive team. It's Dennis. We know he's going to use it really well. And just something that is kind of interesting, kind of like what Sifri said, is that he's got 5 mons that are base 100 speed, which is really, really cool when you think about it. It also does kind of put him in a bind, just because it's really easy to start putting your EVs in a certain area when you know you're going to be planning for base 100s, whether it's like a maximum speed or a minimum speed. And then one other thing is that I would have liked to see a better Z move accompany this. This is only looking like it's only really going to be helpful for this is normal Landorus, not even Landorus T. So with an absolutely phenomenal base Pokemon team, I would have liked to see some kind of more of a Z move support with something so offensive.
Yeah, I really wanted to see him take Waterium Z was still on the board when he took his Z move, and I really wanted to see him grab that for Manaphy because it just loves Waterium Z.
Most people have already said what I would say, and I fully agree. This is a really threatening team. The two only things I'll add is, this is a hyper offensive team, but I love that a lot of his Pokemon, like Shaman, but even things like Muck, are still fairly bulky to the point where he has switch-ins and pivots for things, and you can get creative, maybe bringing an Assault Vest, Victini, or a defensive Shaman, or some sort of rest Mew, or not Mew, Manaphy, which is nice. Also, he has 2 really good leads for any sort of HO team in Azelf and Ribombee, depending on which matchups he really wants to prioritize getting webs, or just, set up rocks and then go for an explosion or something. That's really nice for a very offensively oriented team like his, because he can get up those hazards and start going into his threats and getting kills.
I love that no one's even mentioned the Regigigas or the Slacking. Just oh, that's Dennis. He does that with his T5s.
It's as expected,
Yeah, this is on a technicality, counting the PU league we did or the NU league, he's actually drafted Regigigas 4 times. So that pick I'm not even surprised by. He actually has managed to make that thing good in certain matchups. I think Slacking's pretty whatever, but at the same time, this is Dennis. Like, if there's one coach that's going to draft someone like Slacking and make me not super question it, it's probably going to be him. But he also has 4 free agency picks if he doesn't need it, and there's plenty of still other good tier 5s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, the only thing I really have to criticize is the Z Crystal. But other than that, I think this is another version of his team where he can just sleepwalk to playoffs and then make a run if he really puts in some effort with the team.
Easy playoffs in this conference. Are you kidding me, Carlos?
I mean, that's true. It is loaded, but I mean, he's used Metacham so much now that he knows what he's doing with this.
He's got to make it to playoffs. No, he's got to make it to playoffs so we can continue his streak of knocking off the undefeated team.
True. Yeah,
that's true.
Wait till he makes it to playoffs and run acupressure Metacham again. Oh, it's going to be great.
To say that.
I mean, the undefeated team has been in Blue Division 2 seasons in a row, so watch out for Blue Division.
Did we ban acupressure this season or no?
No.
I think there was talk about it.
There was discussion, but the thing that is banned is passing it, which obviously we learned last season.
All right, I'm gonna go pick up Dodrio really quick. Give me a second.
Oh yeah. But moving on, the next team we have is Brian.
What, me?
Brian is the coach of the Boston Breloom. He is Mega Diancie, Garchomp, Keldeo, Bisharp, Crobat, Decidueye, Salazzle, Lopunny, Gigalith, Golisopod, Sigilyph, and Draconium Z. Thoughts on the team?
Bad team for a bad player.
Facts.
I think my favorite thing about this team is how it pairs some high tier threats like Mega Diancie and Garchomp with what I'm going to say 2 really good mid tier pivots, being Crobat and Decidueye. They're going to be able to keep hazards off the field, be pretty good flexible switch-ins throughout the battle, and get a momentum to get back out into some of his threats. So I think that especially is really cool about this team.
I mean, for me, I think this is definitely a fantastic team. I think it fits his play style really well from what we've seen in the past. For the Z move, I get Dragon Z. I would have preferred something for Keldeo, just as someone who loves Calm Mind, Z move, Keldeo, but I don't think it's a bad pick at all. And I really like the synergy of his Steel Dragon Fairy Core. Really offensive, and then it also has some bulk. And I love the Decidueye pick. Defog's nice there. I feel like hazards aren't really a problem for this team at all, but he still has good options to get rid of it.
I really like Golisopod on this team because I know Brian loves spikes, and it actually complements his team. Like it resists some things that pressure his higher tier picks, like it's like a water, ice, ground resist, which could be helpful in fighting for some of his higher tier picks. I also really like Sigilyph as sort of like a poor man's Alakazam, where it's kind of like a backup check to any setup sweeper he can't really deal with. He can like keep the Magic Card sash on it and just like go for a hit, go for a Thunder Wave or something. It'll make people have to be careful for when they're using setup sweepers because they know he's going to potentially have something that will be able to keep it in check. But otherwise, it's like a pretty good offensive Brian team, and I think he'll use it really well. There's a lot of things here he's drafted before and used well.
One thing we kind of talked about is when you look at a team and you notice, oh, hey, that's a threat. I've got to prepare for that. And his top 3 are 3 of the best. Where you got Mega Diancie, Garchomp with the Dragonium Z and Keldeo, you're always going to say, okay, first things first, I need to be able to check all of these, and then he can build around checks with some of his other mons, which do support it really well. I really like it, kind of like what Sifri said with the Crobat and Decidueye. That's a really nice pivot core with both have defog as well. And then I'll be really interested to see how he uses something like Lopunny and Gigalith on this team, because those are some really interesting ones in that slot.
Those were my biggest question marks, too. I really don't know what he wants to do with those two, and I'm really curious to see.
We can ask you, what were you kind of thinking
sure.
of Lopunny and...
Oh, hello?
Hello?
Okay. Am I getting questioned about Lopunny?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely you are.
What I want to do with Lopunny is I looked up Healing Wish, and I think it's the fastest Healing Wisher outside of Latias, and I didn't want to spend 50 points for a Healing Wisher. I also didn't have 50 points. And so all I really want to do is just bring a Pokemon that has a really good matchup, twice, because I can just bring it back with the Lopunny. It has a little bit of utility in Thunder Waves and Trick Flame Orb with Klutz and all, a little bit of shenanigans outside of that. And that's pretty much all I want to really use it for. It's a pretty simple mon. It's just an extra little tool for me. I really like Healing Wish. I've talked about it before. And I'll be making use of it for sure.
While you've got Lopunny, you have to run at least once the really silly switcheroo Assault Vest set. But
oh yeah, that's a thing. Thanks.
I will say, though, to defend Galeth a little bit, I think it actually fits pretty nicely on this team, helping with special defense boost for a few mods when he's sand up. And then, situationally, Sandvale on Garchomp could be nice. I feel like he has some tricky things he can do with Gigalith if he uses it right for special matchups.
I use Gigalith on a...
I actually have no idea what I'm doing with Gigalith. I'm gonna figure that out.
Well, there are some ideas.
I drafted Gigalith on a Sand team, and I probably ran Sandstorm on things like Bronzong and Quagsire more than I actually brought Gigalith to matchups because I really didn't like it. So I don't know. I'll see if he just sort of uses it as a free agent, because I didn't really like Gigalith when I had it.
We'll see.
I actually had Gigalith for half of last season too. I never actually brought it.
But moving on to our next team, we got Noah of the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, and his team is Zygarde, Weavile, Ferrothorn, Savali, dropped Rotom Heat and Heracross for Moltres and Gengar. Then he has Mega Swampert, Pelipper, Ludicolo, Diancie, and Musharna, followed by Icium Z. Thoughts on the team?
It's super weird. I like it, but it's super weird, and you've got to admit that, Noah. But
I drafted a team based on getting as many 4x weaknesses as possible, so yeah, it's pretty weird.
Yeah, how many do you have? I think 8.
I dropped. If you counted Rotom Heat, it was 8 before I dropped them, but now it's 7.
You lost Heracross, went down to 7. I'm disappointed in you.
The other rain sweepers are 4 times weak to most stuff too, so you can drop the Ludicolo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So besides the fact that it's 4 times weak to everything, it really is just interesting when you start looking at it. A lot of how I see this team being played is using Zygarde and Swampert to really heavily pressure bulky ground types and just kind of try to wear them out throughout the match and see Swampert trying to get in the clean in the end game.
I actually really like that he switched his Pokemon for Moltres. I think Moltres is really, really threatening in rain because it gets 100% accurate hurricanes, and it has a really good special attack stat. So it can be pretty threatening despite not having that powerful Fire Blast. And it's just a pretty solid Pokemon, I think, and it looks cool on this team.
Yeah, it's a really good fire type for a rain team, for sure.
I love Silvally because it's amazing, and that's all I have to say about Silvally. Outside of that, I really like Silvally. Musharna is fantastic too because it's ridiculously bulky for a tier 5 and it's got Baton Pass, so you can come in and kind of use it as a pivot, which is great for a rain team where he's going to want free switch-ins into things like Swampert and Ludicolo to start sweeping. Also, Zygarde's amazing because so few teams actually have good ground resist, if any, once you realize, once you look at 1,000 Arrows. So Banded is great. As a mid-game hitter, or Dragon Dance late game is fantastic.
for me, this is another team where ICMZ is a fantastic pick. Not only is it one of the better Z crystals, but you got Weavile and then maybe even Ludicolo. You got some great options to use it. But
Zygarde gets Z Haze, by the way. Just saying.
what was that?
Z Haze, by the way. So
Oh,
must be
true.
that.
Yo, even better.
I mean, yeah, I'll just say I kind of went in with I just wanted to get a really fun, team, just different. I just wanted to test out because, like, once you have a 4 times weakness, sometimes you like to complement that with something else. Use 4 times weak to try to bait like hidden powers and everything. So I just wanted to build something around where like they have no idea what they're doing with hidden power and everything. And, like add that with Silvally, which you don't even know what it's going to be. A lot of momentum, and then like with Zygarde and even like Swampert and Rain. Everything is going to be checked by like a bulky grass type, and then I felt like with Weavile and then like ICMZ and Ludicolo and then Moltres with Hurricane. I thought it would be pretty cool to try to get something that could really pressure those bulky grass types along with it.
I will say this is a much better attempt at a rain team than mine was. Mine was really bad, and because I kind of all in on the strategy, but this looks like much more diverse than what I had initially drafted for that. So this will be really cool. I look forward to see what happens with this team. It looks like a lot of fun.
And I will say, for a coach who has won 3 championships, you definitely should take a chance to draft a fun team that's really interesting. And it's fine after having so many drafts ranked so highly to have one that's at, 6 or 7. So definitely excited to see how he uses this.
Remember when Noah drafted a fun team in season 3 and he won like 10-2 of like plus 40 differential?
And then quit.
And then quit because he got hacked in playoffs.
Okay.
Big facts.
I just started the Ryan train of murder.
But yeah, let us move on to the next team.
Congrats to our season 8 champ.
Going for a 3rd coach in a row that is in the call, we got Sifra.
Hey guys.
Oh, hi. He is the coach of the Washington Nationals, or however you want to say that.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks better on paper than it is.
It looks great on paper, I will say that, and the logo, though. But his team is Clefable, Scolipede, Mega Scissor, Crocodile, Azumarill, Tornadus Therian, Ursaring, Gastrodon, specifically East, but he can also use the other ones if you'd like. Espeon. He dropped Roselia for Bellossom, and then Electros, followed by Normalium Z. Thoughts on the team?
I love this team. I just think it's kind of similar to his team last season, where it's definitely got an offensive edge to it, but he's also got just fantastic bulk to back it up. A lot of great setup too with Mega Scissor, Belly Drum, Azu with Normalium Z for Z Belly Drum, Scolipede, which can even potentially speed pass. He actually used Ursaring pretty well too as a low tier pick, which is nice. This is just a really threatening team with very few common weaknesses, and just, I don't know, I feel like I keep using the word threatening, but it's just very offensive, but with enough bulk with things like Mega Scissor, Intimidate Crook, potentially like Assault Vest Tornadus, and plenty of Volt Turn too, which is awesome.
Yeah, so one thing I really like is that it looks like he can go all in, but there's some mons that are really going to enjoy like something like support from Scolipede. Just like imagining, like Baton Pass with like speed into like a Normalium Z Belly Drum Azu is just absolutely terrifying. And that's what he picked as Z Crystal, using it all that well. So I think that's what if he's going to be using Z. It's going to be with the Zoom roll, which could be really cool with this type of team. On that, you do have fantastic bulk with Clefable and Mega Scizor. I would have probably liked to see a Dragon type in there somewhere. That's probably one of my only major knocks on it, but I think this looks like something that's really fun, and with Speed Pass with that bulk could be terrifying.
Yeah, it's definitely a very threatening team, and it's a really well-built core with the Torrentee, Scizor, and the Clefable. It's really hard to get around. And then also everything like really pressures you back. Crocodile is a big threat. Azumarill you have to be careful with. And Tornadus is like just a really, really solid mon, and I don't know how it made it through to the 6th round. And it somehow just tends to do that, which is really ridiculous to me because it's really good. Yeah, it's a really hard team to deal with because everything is really, really strong, and they all hit you hard.
Any final thoughts on the team? Then I guess we will move on. Reaching further into our top 5, we got Gayton at number 4. He is the coach of the Green Bay Slackings, and his Pokemon are Landorus Therian, Mega Charizard Y, Tapu Fini, Celebi, Jolteon, Kyurem, Bronzong, Garbodor, Pangoro, Kabutops, Sneasel, and topped off with Flynium Z. Thoughts on the team?
This was my number 1 team, and I'm going to kind of go into why. I think this is like what Robert started off to do, and then, or what Robert basically should have built, basically. Because he has a lot of momentum in the Landorus and the Jolteon, and I guess U-turn on the Celebi too. But they're also threatening Mons, so you have to switch into a Pokemon. And then he has the huge wall breaker in Charizard Y and the Kyurem. He also has some dark types that are hard to deal with in Pangoro and Sneasel, which can like hit you for really heavy hitting dark moves. So you get into a bad position really quickly against this team, just based off of the momentum you can build with that core and the wall breakers. And then on top of that, he has some really good support for it. And spikes with Garbodor, the Bronzong is good. Celebi even has rocks, and the Tapu Fini just kind of holds things down. It can eat hits, and it can still provide pressure without, just doing nothing. It's actually still useful when it comes in. So I just think it's a really, really threatening team to play against.
Yeah, I definitely agree with this team. Charizard Y was a Pokemon I actually considered building a team around because it's the type of Pokemon that can just win on its own, and then when it has such great support like he drafted, it's going to be terrifying to face, especially when I don't think we've had a coach actually use it. Like, I don't know if it's been drafted at all, but it hasn't been used a significant amount in our league, so if people don't really watch out for it, it can really get you good. And then, I mean, he just has great support with it. I like the Kyurem, Bronzong, Fini, Dragon Steel core. Really hard to get rid of all those mons together. And Garbodor will be fantastic for just support, spikes, toxic spikes, all that sort of stuff. And I mean, we saw last year, Pangoro is just can be a terrifying mon when used in a bulky way, or even really just has a lot of options.
I also really like that a lot of his picks, especially in the higher tier, they're great offense, but a lot of them also aren't frail. Things like Celebi with 100 bulk all around, Landorus T, Kyurem, even Zard Y, despite the typing, actually has decent bulk and routes to recover to keep his longevity through the game, which is nice. Paired with some of his really, really good value lower picks, things like Sneasel, which can be a great Pursuit Trapper, which might be nice for Zard Y, because you can maybe Pursuit Trap Lotties or other bulky psychic types or things that might check it. Pangoro is to switch into, and Kabutops is sort of a sleeper low tier pick as a spinner, but with lots of setup too with Rock Polish and Swords Dance and stuff. So I really love this team, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those teams. I tried to write down something I didn't like about each team, and I really struggled to find any sort of weakness with this team. It's really top down tough to deal with. I think he might get a little annoyed with having to run defog on either Lando or Fini or bring spinning Kabutops each week. But, my gripe with this is that he only has 3 options for hazard removal, which tells you how well constructed this team is.
Absolutely, I agree. I think this is a really cool team, and it's not something we've really seen before. So I think it's something really cool to see. And just if you look at his team, there isn't a single flawed pick on there. Everything has utility. There's nothing in the low tier that makes you think, oh, why did he choose that? Everything has a role. It'll be really interested to see how well it does. Personally, I would have liked to see maybe something cool that could use the sun a little bit. That would be something fun to see. Not a knock against the draft at all. Just to see if he has an issue using one of his lower tier picks, it could be something worth looking into. Fantastic Z move, probably the best one to pair with Lando, and I'm really interested to see how he's going to use this.
I will say, in comparison to that sort of, he also doesn't have any Pokemon that are extremely hurt by the sun. Like, Feeny is his only Pokemon that really cares about it, but then you can just go Moonblast, which is just as effective, and doesn't have to bring it the sun every week, so he's not going to have any issues with worrying about the sun. But it might be nice maybe later on to grab something to, use sun, because it's a great weather. But, yeah, I guess we can move right along to our top two. At number 2, we got...
I think we're at the top 3.
Top 3. Oh, you are right. Thank you so much. Number 3 is Newt, or New Tony. He is the coach of the Huntsville Hydreigons with Tyranitar, Excadrill, Tangrowth, Infernape, Galvantula, Guzzlord, Slowking, Weezing, Mega Pidgeot, Gardevoir, Stoutland, and Groundium Z. Thoughts on the team?
So when this draft started, I looked at this team, and he picked Tyranitar and Excadrill first, and I was like, haha, who picks Excadrill this early on? I don't think Excadrill's that good. And then I looked back at this team in the 8th or 9th round. I was like, holy moly, this team is really, really good. I like a lot about this team. There aren't any wasted picks like we were talking about in other teams. And it's just very threatening both offensively and defensively. Tangrowth holds things down. Tyranitar is bulky, but he also has Infernape that threatens you. And obviously the Sandcore and T-Tar Excadrill is always something you have to worry about. Pidgeot Mega also can put out damage. And there's just threats all over on this team. It's a big worry to play against this team if I have to. I don't know if I have to, but I don't look forward to it.
I think we talk about Dennis being the type of person who sort of drafts a similar type of team every time. I think Newt also has done the same thing, where he's drafted Tyranitar pretty much every season. Same thing, things like Weezing and Slowking. But kind of like Dennis, this is absolutely the best version of the team he's drafted. He's got the Sandcore of Tyranitar, Excadrill, and then Stoutland, because why not? But he's paired it with other fantastic picks. The Regenerator core of Slowking and Tangrowth fits it really well because it helps give him some water, ground, and fighting resist that the main Sand core really gives his team. Then plus things like Infernape, which is a great all-around Pokemon, Gardevoir, which is sort of a sleeper fairy with great utility and move pool, and then Mega Pidgeot, which is really nice for a team like this, where it can kind of be like a late game cleaner and another ground immunity. Weezing also, again, another ground and fighting switch, which is perfect for Tyranitar and Excadrill together. I just think this team is unbelievably fantastic. It's got a good wall core to fall back on, but so much ridiculous offense that, plus speed, because you have Mega Pidgeot and then all these things understand. It's going to be a really tough team to have to go up against.
Yeah, this was actually my number 1 rated team, so I feel I have to say some good things about it, but you pretty much hit every point where it's so threatening offensively with really good pivots that hit hard like Infernape and Mega Pidgeot. And it's just got also defensive bulk, even with Guzzlord and Weezing to fall back on. And the Groundium Z pick with Sandrush Excadrill is not going to be fun to take on. If there's one thing that made me sad about this team, it's that he has webs, but none of his Pokemon tend to fall in that speed tier of kind of between 70 and 110 base speed that really appreciates webs. So I don't even know how much he's going to have to use the webs with his Sandrush and the bulk in the back.
Actually, I think webs could be really cool with sand, because obviously maybe not with like extra drill, you're not going to necessarily be, but just even seeing webs and seeing sand, that's going to make an opponent, just when it comes to prep, just think so hard on speed control. Like I could see some people try to bring like Trick Room against him, but then he's got Slow King that could be really good to stop that. And just overall, even just like if he doesn't bring sand, like an Infernape, like if an expert belt behind webs, that's a phenomenal one. And
That's
I think
true. That's true.
And even like Guzzlord even's got great coverage. But it's something that when you're prepping for this, speed is just going to be completely like thrown out the window. You're going to have to try to beat this, through some kind of bulk, which is really crippling when you're team building.
Mm-hmm. And it's difficult with the amount of bulk that he has to go up against that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be. He's in my division. I really look forward to trying to like diagnose how you can break this down, because on paper it looks ridiculously tough to do.
Weather Wars. But yeah, one thing one thing I love about this team is I feel like mods like Infernape and Mega Pidgeot, they're fantastic, but they usually get a lot of pressure on them to be like that main threat on the team. But they fell down lower in the draft, and he was able to support them really well. And I think there are a lot of Pokemon on this team that may not be as fantastic on other teams, but with the support all these Pokemon have, it can be really terrifying, especially when he's super comfortable with, as said before, that this is like a team he's had before with some of the Pokemon. I think this is definitely a team to watch out for, and there aren't really many flaws in it. But now moving on to the top two, we have it starting off with Erob, the final pick in the draft. He is the coach of the Portland Ferrothorns, with his Pokemon being Mega Gallade, Hydreigon, Scizor, Florges, Mamoswine, Roserade, Milotic, Sableye, Raichu, Regirock, Swallow, and Poison Z. Thoughts on the draft?
I think that this is one where I almost want to compare like almost the beginning of this draft to Travis, where we talked about you just look at those first six, and that's scary in itself. Like you completely eliminate like the bottom five in his support, and that's a phenomenal team in itself. You got Fairy Dragon Steel, you got Priority with Mamoswine, you got incredible offense as well. And then what I think sets this apart from the other teams is that you look at those bottom five, and they're also just completely phenomenal mons which have incredible utility. Regular Sableye with Prankster, we all know what that does. It can just be so annoying. Swallow with the increased special attack stat and regen and its boom burst is just so hard to switch into if you don't have a Steel Rock type, and it's so fast. And then of course you got a bulky water and Regirock, which is really bulky to go along with it. So this just looked like an overall scary team with very little flaws on paper.
I think the most impressive thing about this team is the amount of defensive presence that it has, while also not having a single mon that you look at as like, oh, I can get a substitute on that and start setting up on it. Everything has a really good offensive presence, except maybe Regirock, but even that is threatening in its own right. So I was really impressed by that. I also like Swallow at the last pick because this team, kind of like Jax, is going to do a good job of kind of wearing someone down as the battle goes on. And I can see Swallow just coming in and cleaning up at the end of the game.
And I mean, for me, this is one of the best Fairy Dragon Steel cores. Hydreigon being a 4x weak Pokemon but not having to deal with HP Fairy is very nice. You can do so much with that Pokemon, and then paired with the likes of Scizor and Florges, it's going to be really tough to break that core, or even take hits from that core. And then, I mean, Mamoswine is a tried and true Pokemon that's made finals multiple times. It's just, he has a lot of Pokemon that are hard to deal with. And once again, it's another team where there are maybe one or two mons that are questionable, but I feel like it all works really well together, and he got a lot of good value where he needed it. I'm very excited to see how this team works out. But with that, we'll move on to our final team of the draft. The number 1 overall ranked team in our rankings is Kevin of the Brooklyn Bayleafs, bringing back a very terrifying core, or at least similar core to the last season. We started off with Celesteela, Latios, Sylveon, Gyarados, Terrakion, Incineroar, Piloswine, Bioplume, Thundurus, Kecleon, Mismagius, and Psychonium Z, or whatever that one is called. But thoughts on this team?
Those first 2 months, just look at them. Just
This is a beautiful team.
fantastic.
Bad team, bad player.
I think the funniest thing here is Kevin made finals last season, as we all know, and started off with a core that looks a lot like the team that he lost to in finals. So it looks like he might have had a little envy after that game.
I mean, just you look at the first 3, and that just obviously that's probably my favorite Fairy Dragon Steel core of the draft. I mean, Celesteela is, might be, in my opinion, the single best draft league format, which it is a little limited when you can't pick a Z move, but it's so incredibly bulky. And then, as long as you give proper support, basically find electric and fire resist and ways to work around that. And I think he did that really well. He's got such incredible offense in the back between Gyarados, Terrakion, and Thundurus. Even Mismagius is a very good. And he's got an incredible defensive backbone with a ton of offense, and it's going to be really tough to go into that and be able to check everything.
Yeah, I mean, even his offensive Pokemon are really, really bulky. Like his squishy Pokemon, quote unquote, are like Latios and Thundurus, which even like being full offensive are still hard to take down. And it's just really hard to deal with all these really, really good picks who just threaten a lot of Pokemon. And the cores are really well built. Celesteela, Latios, Sylveon, I mean, people already said this, but it's just fantastic. I like Gyarados and Incineroar for the Intimidates, which makes the team even harder to answer. Kecleon was a really cool low-tier pick because it's like a very valuable pick as a tier 5. I think it's pretty underrated. And then everything else is just still good. I think he has like 4 tier 5s, and it doesn't look like it because they're just good picks for those tier 5 slots.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to add is that I love the double Intimidate core of both Incineroar and Gyarados. Like, 1 Intimidate Pokemon on a team is great. Having 2 is going to allow him to easily check a lot of physical threats that other teams might not be able to. Plus, Psychium Z, one cool thing about it is that it does have a couple of Pokemon that I can actually take advantage of it. Like, Latios is the obvious one, but Sylveon does get Psyshock. Sorry, I just had to look at the team. I'm pretty sure Terrakion gets like Zen Headbutts. Thundurus gets Psychic, so does Mismagius. So he has a couple of Pokemon that he can actually slot it on, which might sort of increase his versatility, which is nice. But as I said, this team is just absurd on paper.
He, like, on paper, like what we're saying, like, looks interesting is that his hazard support is a little weak with Latios. Unless I'm missing something, that's it as far as hazard support. But like, he's got 3 Mons in like his first 4 with Celesteela, Latios, and Gyarados, which are levitating over spikes and webs. And then other things which, you know, some are a little rock weak, but others like cover that really well. So like even that flaw, which I kind of noticed as like the one weakness, he covers up really well just by the nature of his team.
And then, I mean, Psychium Z is just, it pairs really well with this team with Latios. That's just terrifying. Makes it so knockoff is far less effective versus this team, which it already really isn't because you got Terrakion with Justified, and then it's just such a hard team to beat, especially with that just amazing core. And like they were saying, part of why this core is so great is almost not touching the ground at all. And then Sylveon has Heal Bell, which can get rid of being status, stuff like that. This team's just absolutely fantastic and really is deserving the #1 overall ranking.
We lost Carlos.
Oh,
We
you
lost me.
you hurt? You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. But yeah. Any final thoughts on this team, or really any team, now that we're at the end of the draft video? Well then, I think
Carlos's team sucks.
besides how awful my team is, I think we can call that a video. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope we all have a fantastic season. Good luck to all the coaches.